Hello, I'm going to show how to use the context manager in Python in order to read information into a piece of code or conversely to store information in an external file on your computer. So let's first look at how to use the context manager to read a file, and I'll start with the syntax. Syntax is with open round parentheses as test file. So this is just an arbitrary name that I give while it's being handled in the context manager. Everything else that follows is going to be indented. So what do I want to open? If I have a file that I want to read, I put its name in single quotes. If it's in the same directory as that piece of code that I'm just working on, I can just refer to its name. So if it's called my text.txt, which I have prepared beforehand, then we can read it and it will be now available as test file. So test file, and if I want to store it as an internal variable, I use the method read. So read test file and assign it to a variable, say called data, very simple. And if that's all that I want, I can outdent, thereby close the context manager, and I have everything that I need. If I'm interested in what I have, I can of course print data and see what's there. So this is what happened today. This is what happened to be in that file. Right, that's good, apart from if I just look at data directly, which I can do in JupyterLab in this case, what I see is this \n is \n what and so on. So I can see line breaks are included as \ns. So these were line breaks in the original file. So what we need to do is we need to do something in order to get rid of those line breaks. And what we will do is we'll look at certain string operations in order to achieve this. So I copy the previous code, bring it down here. And now what can we do in order to get rid of \n in a string? So the method to do is we have data. We use a method called splitlines. And that needs round parentheses. And splitlines will just take away \ns, which come from new line, and take them out and split the string information at that point. So we can save that in a new variable, say data split, because it's after splitting. And if we do so, we can then look at the result, data split. And what has happened? You have to know how the method splitlines work, but what it does, it splits whenever there is a \n and puts the split items in as puts the split components as items into a list, as you can see, surrounded by square brackets. So this is good. We have got rid of all those \n line breaks. But what we now need to do, just copy the code. We need to expand it a little bit more. Namely, we need to get rid of those itemization in a list. This is not what we want. We want, as a result, a single piece of string. So how do we do that? We take this data split list and use the method to bring the pieces together, which is called join. So join is in single quotes dot join, and we apply it to the split data split. That's what it's operating on, and we store this in a new variable called data, say called data joined or something. So if you call that data joined, the result will obviously be in the variable called data joined. And if we look at the result, Yeah, it's okay. Everything is there. No backslash ends. It looks a little bit awkward because everything is just glued together. If we want to have spaces in between, separate the two colons here by, separate the two single quotes by a space, and it will look more nicely. So this is something to remember, because whenever you read from a file, say a data file, maybe there's something you have downloaded from a database. I give an example from the NCBI database. If you use the exact same thing here to open a file that contains FASTA information about, say in this case, a G protein coupled receptor, it may not be very obvious in the beginning, but this actually contains literally hundreds of backslash n's whenever there was a line break or an end of a line in that text file. It's imported also into the code. So you need to remember the use of split lines and join together in order to clean up the information before you analyze the data. The nice thing about the context manager is that we can also use it to write to a file. So let's do that. Let's finally write information to a file. I create something that I want to write to a file, maybe a variable called students, and the variable contains, maybe a tuple, contains the information about students. So let's take the names. What do we have? We have the name, one is called Mac and one is called Mona, and the third is called, I don't know what, Mike or something, Minky. Yeah, let's call it Minky. Doesn't really matter so much. Let's see what it's in there. So the variable contains Mac, Mike, and Mac, Mona, and Minky. And how do we process this tuple if we want to see things on the screen, each piece of information separate from the other in a separate line? We do a for loop, right? We can run this through a for loop, say for a name in, what's the variable called students, colon, and then we say print that name, print the name or whatever the information is. And if we do that, we can see one after the other nicely separated. So if this is how we want it in that file that we're going to create, then we can use the context manager and use that code to achieve this. So how would we use the context manager? Well, you remember the syntax. Syntax was with, open, as, and then some name, my file, colon. So what goes into open now? Now the file doesn't yet exist, so we need to create something. So what we do here is we give it a name. So we call that students data, and it's just a text file, so call it students data.txt with this extension. That's how we want it to be called. And then we have to specify that now this doesn't yet exist. We want to write something into it. So to do so, we use a keyword argument called mode, and mode gets specified as W for write. So now we can do the previous code. We can say, what did we do? For name in students, colon, print name. That's it. It sort of did the job, but it prints everything on the screen because we used the print function as is. So now I'll show you finally how to modify the print function in order to get things written to a file. So the print function, if you look at its documentation, does have a keyword called file. And using that keyword argument, we can specify that we don't want that printed on the screen, which is the default. So if we specify file, and what will the file be called? Well, the file that we want to have it in is within the context manager. It's called my file. So it will have on the computer the name specified here, but within the context manager, it's my file. So just specify write things to my file and everything will be fine. So let's do it. Of course, we can see nothing because there's no more print to the screen. So to finally check whether everything went well, we look at whether on my desktop there is a file called students data. There is a file called students data. It's here. And if I open it, it actually contains what I instructed it to contain, namely the names of those students. And whatever you like to have in there will be printed in there. If I just close that file, now we have seen how to use the context manager to create a new file and fill it with the information from the code.